Ayes 33, nays 29.
It was late Friday night, New York becoming the sixth and largest state to legalize same-sex marriage. It passed the state Senate with bipartisan support. Celebrations were had all over the Empire State and the world this weekend. Yet this landmark victory for marriage equality will be tough to duplicate across the country. 29 states have constitutional bans on same-sex marriage. 12 others have laws against it. Vocal opponents aren't helping matters either. New York's Archbishop Timothy Dolan calls marriage equality detrimental to the common good. Republican Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey says he's, quote, no fan of marriage equality and will oppose it in his state. Puzzling, though, considering New Jersey's current financial woes. New York's law is expected to boost tourism, increase sales tax revenue, and bring in millions of dollars. Nearly $400 million over the next 3 years, to be exact. This, according to New York's Senate Independent Democratic Conference. Governor Christie might want to reconsider. And in a class all by himself, there is then Pat Robertson, the evangelical leader claiming the equality of all will lead to the ruin of America.
There's never been a civilization ever in history that has embraced homosexuality and turned away from traditional fidelity, traditional marriage, traditional child rearing, and has survived. There isn't one single civilization that has survived that had openly embraced homosexuality. So you say, what's going to happen to America? Well, if history is any guide, the same thing's going to happen to us.
Well, joining me now is another opponent of marriage equality, Brian Brown, the president of the National Organization for Marriage and a supporter of marriage equality, president of the National Action Network, the Reverend Al Sharpton. Gentlemen, welcome to you both. Mr. Brown, I want to start with you. Do you agree with what we're hearing from Pat Robertson, how he is saying that this is going to be the ruin of society?
Well, I think when you redefine marriage, you redefine it for everyone, and there are profound consequences. We've seen those consequences in Massachusetts and other states. Children being taught in the schools in second grade that it's the same to grow up and marry a boy as it is to marry a girl, and that parents who teach otherwise are somehow bigots. This is a monumental change. It will have serious consequences. But I think that if you look at the New York vote, the way that the vote was handled, the fact that the Religious Liberty Amendment was not even made public until 3 hours before the vote. They did it under the cover of darkness. It was a total sham. It wasn't a representation of democracy. Whenever the people have voted on this issue, in even liberal states like California and Maine, when the people vote directly, they know that there's something unique and special about marriage, and they vote to protect it, and we're going to fight to make sure the people of New York get the same chance.
Reverend Sharpton, do you agree with this?
Well, I think the issue is whether or not we have the right to legislate how people conduct their lives, whether we agree with it or not. Many of us are religious and have our personal feelings, but do we have the right to impose those feelings, or do we have the right to instruct people that they have to look at life and look at morality the way we do? And that, I think, is the issue at hand here. It is interesting to me that a lot of the people that are, quote, conservative on this, including Mr. Gingrich, that wants all of a sudden now federal law to tell states what to do, but they don't want federal law to tell states what to do in other areas. So they're very, very selective on where they want government to interfere with people's lives.
Mr. Brown, as the Reverend brought up, we did talk about Newt Gingrich earlier. He says that this law muddles the institution of marriage. But isn't it a fact that divorce is the only challenge in existence to marriage? And wasn't divorce invented by married people to get out of said marriage?
Well, divorce is not the only challenge to marriage. We have a lot of challenges to marriage. One is same-sex marriage. But
how is same-sex marriage a challenge to your marriage? I don't understand how same-sex marriage is a challenge to your marriage. And if you stand for the National Organization of Marriage, wouldn't your nemesis be divorce, the opposite of what marriage is?
Obviously, we oppose and won't reform on divorce law. We work to make sure that people can stay together in their marriages. And
so you would never allow for people to divorce?
But no, of course not. I didn't say that.
You want reform on divorce law, though. I don't understand what you want for reform on divorce law.
Divorce reform is different than saying no one could ever divorce.
It is, because he's allowing divorce. You're not talking about eradicating divorce, Mr. Brown. You're talking about reforming it. Here you're talking about eradicating.
This has nothing to do with the issue at hand. The issue at hand is whether, if you redefine what marriage is something. It's a unique and special union of a man and a woman. If you redefine this, you don't have marriage marriage anymore. You got to call a square a square and a circle, and same-sex marriage is not marriage, no matter if the state says that it is.
But that's if you're going to limit it to where you want to limit it. With the
well,
issue
would you limit marriage to two people, Reverend Sharpton?
The issue is whether adults have the right to make their own moral decisions.
Well, would you limit marriage to only two people? I have a simple question. Would you limit marriage to only two people? Aren't you imposing your morality by saying that only two people should be married?
The issue at hand is whether or not if you believe in what you believe in, do people have the right to disagree and conduct their lives in a way that does not interfere with your life? And then do you have the right to impose your beliefs or my beliefs? I may have the same beliefs as you, but I don't have the right, nor do I have the insensitivity to say people have to believe what I believe. We're not a society built on one religion or one set of moralities.
Well, I'm not talking about
a democratic society.
I'm not talking about one religion or one set of morality. I'm talking about the overwhelming consensus of all of human history. Different civilizations, different faiths, different backgrounds. Throughout human history, human beings have understood that there's something unique and special about men and women coming together in marriage. And it isn't bigotry or it isn't discrimination to stand up for this core truth. And I don't think that the overwhelming majority of Americans in states across the country who've stood up and voted for a marriage as the union of a man and a woman do this out of animus.
Let me give you a
Gays and
newsflash.
lesbians have the right to live as they choose. They do not have the right to redefine marriage for everyone.
There are people of different religions and different parties that say people should have the right to make their own choices. Republicans voted for the marriage equality law in New York the other night. So the uniqueness that you say now has expanded where other people are saying, if I want to preach what I believe to be marriage, I have the right to preach that, and I should convert people to that. I should not mandate people deal with my definition of morality or definition of life.
But this is a fundamental misunderstanding of what same-sex marriage does. Same-sex marriage doesn't just expand the notion of marriage. There are two ideas on the table. There are two different ways that the state can go. The state can enforce the idea that marriage is whatever we want it to be, two men, two women, and that people like me and our organizations are somehow bigoted and discriminatory because we stand for this core truth. When you change the definition of marriage, Reverend, you change the way churches are treated, you change the way religious organizations are treated.
Mr. Brown, you have people that have open marriages, you have people that have divorces, you have all kinds of definitions. You've just limited it and tried to say that we're going to just limit the conversation to what you've decided the limitations are. And that's exactly what people are saying. We should not have the right to do that.
Mr. Brown, is your organization focusing on anything other than same-sex marriage when you say that you're trying to reform marriage?
Of course. I mean, Maggie Gallagher, who is our founding president and chairman of our board, has been working relentlessly on analyzing what the breakdown in our marriage culture has done.
But if same-sex marriage hasn't existed alongside divorce, how is it even comparable?
Well, we can only conceive of same-sex marriage at the point at which we have a broken marriage culture. I mean, for eons, human beings have understood that there's this uniqueness about marriage. Only this type of union can connect parents with children and allow children to be known and known by their parents.
This should be the National Organization for Good Parents, then, not the National Organization for Marriage.
Again, you're asking me if I'm deeply concerned and troubled by the breakdown in our marriage culture. Of course I am. But same-sex marriage is the final step. What it does is fundamentally redraw the lines. It redefines marriage. And the consequences are clear. We do not want our children taught in the schools that somehow it's discrimination.
You don't want them to be taught
stand up for this truth. It's not tolerance. It's saying that Archbishop Dolan or all of these other faith leaders are somehow the equivalent to racists or bigots because they understand that marriage is unique and special.
Support civil unions?
No, we don't. If you mean by civil unions same-sex marriage by another name, in jurisdiction after jurisdiction, when you pass civil unions...
If two people of the same sex live their life together, build an estate together, and one passes before the other, you don't have any concern that the fact that they've developed something together, that they have united, that one would not have the privileges of continuing and having the ownership of what they built together. That's no concern concern of yours.
No, of course. I mean, in any instance
how
where...
would you remedy that if we have the law according to the way you are advocating?
There are states like Hawaii that have reciprocal beneficiaries arrangements in which any two people can get into a reciprocal benefits arrangement and therefore share these rights and benefits. But civil unions and marriage are wrong.
So they can only share them if they do that in the language that is something that you agree with, and that's what I disagree with. We should not have the right to impose it on people, even if we disagree with it. People have the right to disagree with it.
We're going to have to leave it there. Gentlemen, thanks so much. Brian Brown, I appreciate your time. Brian Brown with the National Organization for Marriage, also the Reverend Al Sharpton. I'd also like to point out to our viewers tonight that the Reverend is going to be here for the rest of the week hosting. He was slated to host tonight, but due to some travel from the West Coast, he got in a little late.
We're going to fire it up.
Are your arms tired from flying in?
Yeah, I was trying to get here, but my arms let me down, but I'm here now.
That's all right.
I'll spend the night. I'll be ready.
We ask you to stay tuned. You're watching The Ed Show only on MSNBC.